Joining us now, Nick Freitas. Nick, House of Delegates member, running for Congress. That'll be decided finally on Saturday. Finally, we'll get a nominee sometime at midnight or earlier, hopefully. If there's a first ballot winner, there's only 2 ballots, but it's going to go on for a while. And somebody is going to be winning it and then facing off with that Abigail Spanberger. And Nick joining us now. Great to have you with us, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me on, John.
Hey, I just got to tell you this, Nick. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be your headliner at your rally. I guess it was a rally, right? On Saturday night in Chesterfield at the American Legion. So I just got to tell my audience. So I get invited to go to introduce Nick, and I get there, and it's like way out in Chesterfield somewhere. It was a long drive from Ruther Glen where I was. It took me like 45, 50 minutes where my son was playing baseball. So I got there, and I'm expecting, Saturday night, American Legion, alcohol-free event, much to my chagrin. So I go out there, and I figure, this is going to be like 25 people or something. Freitas has got 125 people there. It's got standing room only, got people standing up. Younger people had to give up their chairs. Place was absolutely packed on a Saturday night in the middle of nowhere at an American Legion Hall, which was very difficult to get to. And I got to tell you, I walked out of that, and I went home, and I said, Ann, or I went back to our hotel, and I'm like, Ann, this guy's got something going on here. Nick, I thought that was a pretty stunning crowd and pretty fired up.
Well, thank you. You did a great job, by the way, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do it. But, yeah, we didn't know what to expect. Obviously, with everything that the governor's been doing, COVID, health concerns, I would have been thrilled if we would have had, 20, 30 people there. But like you said, it was standing room only, and it was a great night. It's been about an hour just answering questions. And, look, we're excited. It's the sort of momentum that we have going into the convention. And so we're very confident with where we're at.
So tell me about the convention on Saturday. I don't think there's going to be a one ballot victor here. So how do you if you've got aged people, and I'm serious, Nick. I'm not asking this to be a wise guy because I hate conventions. But if you've got aged people like senior citizens, I mean, how do you expect them to sit in the car for 12 hours?
No, well, so they don't have to do that. And that's one of the things that the committee's tried to do is make sure that this is as easy as possible given the circumstances. So you can show up and vote within the first voting block, which is 8 to 11 a.m. You have to be in line by 11, but essentially you can go park, go get your credentials, go vote, and after that, you can leave. If you need to come back in order to vote for a second ballot, there's going to be multiple candidates texting, emailing. There's going to be information on social media, on websites, notifying everyone if they need to come back. We're making available information on where people can go vote and then go grab lunch or do some shopping and then come back if they need to. But yeah, and there's also going to be entertainment and things going on in the area. So nobody needs to be stuck in their car. Nobody needs to be waiting around for hours if they don't need to. So again, I think we've made as many considerations as we can to ensure that people can be safe, people can be comfortable. And again, they don't have to be hanging around all day in order to wait for results.
Everybody's job now is to basically keep their people there. And the way Andrew just explained it to me, you have to get credentialed between 8 and 11 a.m. And look, Nick, I just have to say this. I hate conventions, right? and here it is, 8:16, prime time. I've got the leading candidate on, and instead of talking about your positions and what you're going to do to beat Abigail Spanberger, which I'm going to get to in a minute, I'm spending another 5 minutes on the logistics of this asinine convention that you're doing on Saturday. Again, not your fault, not Andrew's fault, not anybody's fault, but it is what it is. And so I just hope that at some point we can get people in these districts that see the folly of doing these, because here we're like wasting time again talking about you have to be there by 11, you have to get credentialed, then there's a second ballot. I mean, and now your job is basically keep your people there. I mean, it's possible if there's a third ballot, Nick, that 200 people or 300 people can end up picking the nominee. That's possible, right?
I mean, you got to be there. You got to be voted in order to be counted. But again, I think we're doing everything we can to make sure that again, people can either be comfortable or again, they can vote, they can leave, they can come back if they need to. Again, at this point, it is what it is, and we're just going to win with what we have.
So, Nick, why are you the best person to go up? If you're the nominee, how are you going to beat Abigail Spanberger?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. Obviously, Republican voters need to know that I'm actually going to vote, legislate as a Republican. We have too many Republicans that think it's perfectly acceptable to say one thing on the campaign trail and do something different once they're elected. I've got a 5-year record that shows that I do exactly what I say I'm going to do. The other thing with Abigail Spanberger is she made her entire campaign about being a moderate who reaches over the other side of the aisle and works with Republicans and won't do what Nancy Pelosi tells her to. And none of that's played out. Absolutely none of it. On every single thing the Democrats have wanted to do, pretty much, she's been right there with them. She's voted with Pelosi over 90% of the time. She's voted to the left of AOC and Bernie Sanders on issues. And I think 7th district, that is not the sort of district we are. President Trump carried this district by almost 7 points in 2016. Once people start becoming familiar with what Abigail Spanberger wants to do. And the other thing, too, here to understand is she's supporting Joe Biden. Look at what Joe Biden just did with his energy policy. I mean, once we start laying out what it is that she actually supports versus the persona she tries to project while she's in the district, I think a lot of voters are going to reject that. I think Trump voters are going to come out in record numbers, and we're going to win.
I agree with that. I also think that as goes the 7th district, goes the Trump campaign. If we lose the 7th, which is a Trump district, I believe it's going to be that much more difficult for the president to get reelected, no doubt about it. Nick, let me just ask you this straight out. Yesterday, the president talked about a potential executive order where he would give DACA recipients a, I guess, pathway to citizenship. How do you stand on that?
It really depends on what it looks like. I have a problem anytime that we reward somebody that has essentially broken the law. And part of the reason why I have a problem with it is because it just encourages more of the same. Now, I think what the president is trying to do is trying to get concessions on other critical elements with immigration reform, with border security and things like that. But we've been down this route before. And if we don't get any commitment from the left to actually, stop the problem at its source by doing better border security, by doing comprehensive immigration reform that is actually meaningful, then they're going to get what they want, and we're never going to get what we want. So, I trust this president to be able to negotiate. I just think we've got to be very, very careful that we're not once again incentivizing people to come here illegally and not doing any of the things that we need to do to ensure that we actually fix the border crisis and fix the immigration problem in this country.
What do you think the president should do? I mean, should he go forward and cut a deal with DACA? Should he just say no? If you were in Congress and you had to vote on a deal, and basically the deal that the president offered last time is give me a wall, change the immigration system legislatively so that it becomes merit-based, get rid of chain immigration, and I'll agree to a pathway for citizenship for DACA recipients. Is that something that you would be able to support?
If we got everything that we're asking for in place first, then I would be willing to consider what the president's proposing, provided that, again, we're not allowing people to once again step in front of everybody that's already been waiting in line. One of the things the president said is, look, there have to be some consequences to this. You can't go right to the front of the line when you broke the law and came over here. But there's certain pathways that include military service and things like that. Again, I'm willing to consider what the president's trying to do, but we have to get the border security, we have to get the immigration reform that we've been fighting for decades now in place before we agree to anything else. Because the Democrats have played us on this before. They did it during the Reagan administration, where Reagan granted blanket amnesty on the promise that we were going to actually fix the border problem. And what happened? Well, the amnesty came, but none of the border problems issues were fixed. So I think we need to negotiate from a position of strength there, which says once we get the things that we've been asking for, then we can talk about the other things. But I'm not willing to. Democrats have not dealt in good faith with us on this, and I think we need to remember that before we go into any deals with them.
Well, nothing they did has been on good faith. Joe Biden laying out an energy policy yesterday. I called it cow farts and unicorns. Basically, wants to eliminate all sources of energy by 2035. What was your reaction to that, Nick?
Oh, it's absurd. Not only is it not going to work, but then what you're going to do is you're going to throw literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans out of their jobs. Then at the same time, what you're going to do is you're going to create soaring energy costs for all Americans as a result. One of the biggest problems we have, if you really care about the environment, then you have to actually let the free market work. Right. There is a free market answer to all of this. And one of the things I ask people when I got asked a question last night, what do you think about climate change? How are you going to protect the environment? I said, well, I think you protect the environment by ensuring property rights. I think you protect the environment by allowing the free market to come up with solutions that actually work within the marketplace. But here's my question to everybody that wants this top-down government-imposed approach. Can you show me one country which diminishes property rights? Can you show me one country which tries to centrally plan their economy that has an environmental record that you would actually want to adopt? Whether it's China, whether it's former Soviet Union, whether it's Venezuela, all of these countries which adopt these kind of socialist approaches to quote unquote saving the environment, the end result is that they end up tearing apart the environment at the same time that they're destroying their economy. And the only people that benefit from this are people in political positions and a few select companies that end up getting millions upon millions of dollars in government funding and tax dollars at the expense of everyone out there that's actually trying to come up with workable solutions. So, it's absurd. It's going to cost jobs. It's not going to work. Let the free market work. And we see it everywhere else. When the free market's allowed to operate, when it's allowed to function without the government constantly intervening, you do get this sort of solution. And when the government comes in and subsidizes things like it did with Solyndra, $500 million bailout to a company that went bankrupt, I think it was close to a year later, because once these green companies realize that they no longer have to innovate, they no longer have to be creative, they no longer have to be adaptive, all they have to do is modify their business plan to get government dollars, well, then you don't get the sort of green energy development that they claim to want. You just get cronyism. And that's not what we need for the economy, and it's certainly not what we need for the environment.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Nick Freitas, one of 4 viable candidates running for the nomination for Congress, 7th District, that'll be decided in a convention on Saturday in Doswell, a marathon, drive-by, non-assembled, whatever it is. It's going to go on for hours. Fill your car up with gas, bring plenty of food, bring water, and let the last people that don't die is going to nominate somebody. Nick, I just can't get over this, how bad this thing is. But look, it is what it is. Somebody's going to have to win on Saturday. We're with Nick Freitas. Nick, thanks for being with us. So let's get to another big issue coming up, and that is the president. How does he turn the corner and win this election? You look at every poll he's down. I just want to get your thoughts on that quickly, and then I'm going to turn to another topic. Go ahead.
Well, I think that what the president's trying to do at the federal level actually makes a lot of sense when we talk about getting people back to work and doing it in a safe manner. I think one of the things that you're going to see is more and more people are going to recognize that those states are actually adopting the suggestions that the president is putting out with more reopening, more options. That those states are going to start to succeed. They're going to be the beneficiaries of the economic development. We've already seen this in places like Florida. That's what I think is going to start to convince a lot of these other people that are just getting tired of these random edicts from people like Governor Ralph Northam that don't seem to make any sense. We're in phase 3, then we're back into phase 2. Our kids are going to school. No, they're not. Right? That's going to frustrate voters, and I think a lot of them are going to come back around and recognize, as they see what's going on, especially in these Democrat-controlled urban areas, as they see what's going on in Democrat-controlled states, where economic numbers are tanking, kids aren't going back to school, and they're not even getting a healthcare benefit from all the draconian measures they take. I think that turns people right back to the president. Black
Lives Matter. What do you make of this organization?
So someone asked me once, what do you think of Black Lives Matter? I said, as a statement, I think it's unequivocally true. As an organization, it's run by 2 people that brag about being trained Marxists. I mean, one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter came out and said that she read Marx, Lenin, and Mao Zedong and thought to herself, wow, we could have an economy like that. Okay, well, technically that's true. We could have the sort of economy Mao Zedong implemented in communist China, where 45 million people were starved or murdered by the regime. But I don't think that's the sort of policy objective we should be pursuing in the United States. And unfortunately, I think what the organizers of the organization have done is they've used a term which everyone agrees with, and they've turned it into a money-making machine to push an agenda that ultimately has nothing to do with lives at all. It has everything to do with controlling lives through the power of government, centralized planning, and socialist objectives. And I think it is perfectly fair for us to point out the difference between the statement and the organization.
Final question here. We're running out of time. The governor yesterday saying that he's going to make masks mandatory inside locations, and he's going to hold the business owners accountable for that. I don't like wearing a mask. I think it's unhealthy. I'm unconvinced that it does anything. But I took the position today that I don't want to put business owners at risk of getting fined or losing their license because they have to hassle with me not wearing a mask. That's number one. And the second thing is, if I've got to wear a mask to keep businesses open and people in jobs, it's a small price to pay. What did you think of the governor's edict yesterday, Nick?
I think it's a perfect example of what you can expect if Joe Biden gets in control of the entire country. And that is, if you don't do what we say, we'll punish someone that you care about, or we'll punish someone that you don't want to see hurt to make you comply with whatever we tell you to do. Because typically this would be a law enforcement function, but instead what he's doing is he's telling every business out there, because a lot of law enforcement agencies have said, we're not expending resources to try to arrest people for masks. But instead, he's telling businesses now, we'll run you out of business, we'll fine you, we'll shut you down if you don't do what we say. If you don't become an action arm of the government, we'll shut you down. And it shows the kind of draconian measures they're willing to take. It shows the sort of authoritarian measures that they're willing to take. Not to mention the fact, John, let's think about this logically. If you have a legitimate health condition that prevents you from wearing a mask, then nobody can make you wear one, and nobody should make you wear one. But on top of that, HIPAA regulations state that you can't ask someone if they have a medical condition. So ultimately, I don't see how he plans to enforce this one way or another. All he's going to do is end up getting the Commonwealth in court, where he's going to spend tax dollars defending a position that is indefensible. So look, let people make their decision, give people the information they need, let them make informed decisions with respect to their safety and the safety of others. Of course, if you go into a business, you've got to respect their property rights. But ultimately, this just shows, this takes us inside the mentality of people like Governor Ralph Northam, where do what I say, or I just won't punish you, I'll punish your friend. And that is pretty terrifying.
LeVar Stoney, Mayor, Richmond. I have businesses in Richmond. We have a 30% dropout rate of high school in Richmond. 30%. Think of that. 3 out of 10 kids don't get a high school education in the city limits of Richmond. Oh, by the way, when LeVar Stoney came in and said he was going to be the education mayor, it was 20%. 4 years later, it's 30%. Worst mayor since de Blasio in New York City. This guy's horrible. So having said that, now he closes schools in Richmond for an entire semester. So kids in Richmond haven't been to school since March. They're not going back till January. Can you help us understand how that benefits children?
It doesn't benefit children. I mean, let's face it. Richmond has had one mayor for 2 years, going all the way back to 1868. So this has been completely dominated by Democrats. For the last several decades, it's been completely dominated by liberal policy. And every year, the same politicians run on the same thing. It's always Democrats promising that if you put them in office, they'll bring back economic development, they'll keep your streets safe, and they'll fix your schools. And the schools get progressively worse. The teachers are in a horrible spot. The streets are not safer. And now you have economic development that's going to be leaving Richmond because they're afraid of riots, and they're not going to have an educated workforce if they can't educate kids. The solution to this for a long time has not been difficult to understand. If you actually give parents more control over how their education dollars are spent, not only will they have more options within the educational marketplace, but teachers will also be better taken care of because they'll actually be able to have some control over their classroom. If we had some freedom right now among parents, what they'd be able to do is choose education options from a multitude of options instead of being forced into one top-down, one-size-fits-all, government-imposed solution. Well, now, those of us who have been fighting for options for years have been told that if we didn't, because we wanted options, we were against public schools or we were against teachers. Well, now they've shut down the one option that they actually provided for parents that, by the way, wasn't doing well for their students anyways. And they're still not going to hear any sort of discussion about options. So this isn't about education. This is about control. And every time they fail, they find a new enemy to point to instead of taking any responsibility for the problems of their own government. Unbelievable.
It's sickening that kids in Richmond are going to go 9 months without being in school. Think of that, Nick Freitas, 9 months. Unbelievable. Hey, we're out of time. Do you have a rally tonight? Where is it?
So tonight we're going to be going down to Powhatan. We'll be meeting down there. We'll be there at 7 o'clock. If you go on our Facebook page, you can get the details. Also, you can check our website at nick4va.com. We had a great rally last night, and or I shouldn't say rally, it was a protest, unless the governor's listening. We had well over 100 people there. We had a Facebook Live town hall, over 30,000
protest.
We're not having rallies. We're having protests. That way, we're good to hold them. But yeah, we'll continue to do these all the way till Saturday. So thank you very much,
Nick. I got to go. You had a protest. Good recovery. People want more info. Where do they go?
nick4va.com. Also go on Facebook. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of negative, attacking Republicans lately coming from one of the candidates. If people want to ever find out where I actually stand on positions, they can always contact me directly. Go to our Facebook, go to our website. We've got answers to all of those questions and any questions that they might have about the convention as well.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for being with us. Good luck on Saturday.